it comes to politics, I'm well past the tinfoil hat stage. I need a good helmet for the banging my head against the wall stage. The Kate Daly Show starts now.
To invade 7 countries. If you go back to 9/11, and when Wesley Clark said we're gonna invade 7 countries in 5 years, what you were talking about were the countries where those central banks were not on board to do programmable money, and their governance structures were not on board with essentially, because of Epstein, I'll call it the Rockefeller Rothschild model. There was an effort to say, okay, we're going to basically assert control of the central banks in those countries. That's my interpretation. And I think one of the reasons we're seeing so much tension around Iran is because Iran right now is the big leakage in the system.
How? It's not about their nukes?
No. Iran's central bank counts. One of the reasons it counts is because their oil and energy is very important, including for China.
Yeah.
And that's very important in the BRICS system. What the BRICS system is trying to do is to create independent payment systems. But if you're going to come out with programmable money, with digital IDs that are interoperable globally and programmable money that controls in each jurisdiction centrally, you can't afford leakage. And so you've got way too much leakage in the system to proceed with what they're trying to do. And Iran and the BRIC nations are a sticking point. And certainly Iran's oil, feeding China gives China greater independence.
So you think that one of the motives behind toppling all these governments was the creation of the control grid we're talking about now?
Right. So if you go back, you had the wonderful Richard Werner on your show.
Yeah.
And Richard has a book called The Princes of the Yen, which is about the sort of effort to take over the Japanese central bank. And I think what you're looking at, I think part of the state of play with both Russia and Iran is how are you going to make sure that those central banks are entirely in the system?
Okay. Interesting clip. We're going to talk about that. Welcome, Kate Daly Show at your service, and many, many served. I think we're over 28 million listens. It's a lot. But, I'm not owned, so it gets pretty interesting on the show. And by the way, it's going to get real interesting today. Melissa is out today, and Susan will be joining me later. There's so much information that I want to go over that I think is really, things that aren't being said. So I think that's going to be really important today. Also, check out the new Maha movie. There's a lot of interesting things being done right now. And I think obviously we need so much more, right? We need so much to happen in the Maha, in the Make America Healthy Again. And this show has been really dedicated to finding out a lot about disease and what actually causes it, and parasites and all the things, because you know how I feel about the medical cabal, right? So check out the Maha movie. It's on, I think you can get it on Netflix and Prime, but it's the episodes just started coming out, and you're going to want to check this out. It's kind of cool. Just some of the things that are going on. And also, Peter Schweitzer is tomorrow's show with his new book. The show is also brought to you by Cardio Miracle, because I drink it all the time. So it actually helps me lose weight, because I sip on it in the morning. I drink it. Somebody was asking me, you should be drinking it within 20 minutes. I do. And then I do another one and I drink it throughout the day, and it kind of keeps me full, but it's full of nutrients. So like 20 times the fruits and vegetables, and the vitamin C delivery is amazing. So it gives me a lot of energy. And then I'm not drinking energy drinks, because I normally would probably crave one, and I don't crave energy drinks anymore after doing this every day. The nitric oxide going into your system is amazing. Try it out. You're going to love it. It's cardiomiracle.com/Kate. Okay. You can try it out, and there's a money back, even a money back guarantee on it. So you don't really have anything to lose, which is kind of cool. All right. So there's so much that I want to bring you today in things that aren't being said out in mainstream. So deals being made behind the scenes. More on Iran. I just kind of want to talk a little bit, though, about that clip with Catherine Austin Fitts and Tucker Carlson. This was a kind of an interesting clip because what she was basically saying was digital ID is coming in, so they can't have a country not willing to go along with digital ID. And right now, as it stands, and I'm not sure if we've actually said this on the show, but as it stands right now, all the members, all of the EU member states have to offer a European digital identity wallet by the end of this year. If you travel, you've recognized from the United States, like over to Europe, you've seen that I've mentioned this before on the show, you've actually seen that there are things in play that you have to do before November. It goes into operation in November for flying, but you have to have like a separate sort of ID-ish thing going on there. So they're telling you that, if you're flying over to Europe, you better have this installed. So it's kind of interesting how they're ramping that up. And then many countries are planning digital ID rollouts legislation from now until 2030. So that's kind of interesting to see where we're at right now, because what they're projecting for the United States, but I actually think it might happen sooner than this, is by 2035, you're going to have all digital, maybe 10% cash at the very, very most, maybe in more rural areas. But for the most part, it's going to be all digital. So the UN, the UN Sustainable Development Goal was to have legal identity by 2030 for all nations. So that's kind of, that's where we're headed. They're not shy about saying it. And honestly, it's not a theory and it's not a conspiracy. It's the facts. It's what they've already designed. So this is going to be where if you're not in the digital ID system, you better figure out how to live and work, because everything will be inside the system. So I wanted to kind of talk for just a moment, because she was basically saying this was one of the things about this, the things that have transpired about Iran in the last, week or so, that it's really leading to digital ID, which it could be a factor. But I do want to say this. Now, I've been saying on the show that we own Iran. Okay. We might not be able to completely direct its course all the time with everybody installed, right? You're going to have different people kind of go off on their little tangents, but we have controlled like the major mechanism of Iran since the Shah days. Okay. Now I want to give you a piece of that pie that backs that up. Okay. So the Iran World Bank membership, you guys realize that around the same time that the CIA was coupping Iran and putting in the Shah, right? This was when Iran became a member of the World Bank. Now, I want you to think about that for just a moment, because being a member of the World Bank is kind of an interesting piece of the puzzle to show you that we have a very, very big club, and that the intelligence agencies that came along at the same time, they were already in operation. They weren't really named until I think 47 or 48, but that they were in operation. And basically, Iran became a member in 1945. They also contributes financially as a member, and I just think that was kind of interesting. I really need people to kind of understand that there is more of a theater going on than people realize. Do you guys remember, of course, 2020 and Blovid-19, which I refer to all the time because it blew, and it was a huge lie. So Iran completely complied with COVID. We realize that, right? They weren't renegade. They weren't rogue. I know we look at them like the rogue country, but they completely complied from the very, very beginning. It was kind of odd. Anyway, just wanted to mention that Russia's relationship with the World Bank came right after the dissolution of the Soviet Union. And the Soviet Union never joined the World Bank. But the second that the Soviet Union went down, they basically became a member. So after the USSR collapse in 1991, Russia came on board in 1992. So did Ukraine, 1992. China officially joined the International Bank of Reconstruction and Development and the main lending arm of the World Bank in 1980, which is kind of interesting. You know, you kind of look at these pictures here. Let me add this right here. Okay, I'm on YouTube. I'm adding this photo. Here is Rockefeller. Here is Kissinger, and here's China. Here we go. See? The club. It's the club. Here is, let me show you this one. This one is Putin and Kissinger. They look kind of chummy. Okay. Here's China, at the World Economic Forum giving their speeches. I think there's just so much more here than people want to recognize as far as the relationships to the World Bank, who we control, because I know that Catherine was talking about the countries that weren't quite on board with banking, but these countries are on board with banking. So there's that. I don't know that that is the biggest. I know that digital ID is coming. And I said that on this show for the last several years, that this was the big hill to die on for the deep state. This is the one that's the most important to them because it's utter control over everybody. And it's coming. But there are some other things that are also involved in this. And this is why I want to talk to this for a second. The World Bank as well was created in 1944 during the Bretton Woods Conference and primarily by the United States. So this is the mechanism, the World Bank control that basically these countries that we think are rogue, that we're told are the bad guys, right? The reason we lose our liberty is because we're always trying to protect ourselves from the bad guys, are actually all members of the World Bank. All right, caller, go right ahead.
Yeah, a couple of points. First of all, can you hear me? Because I'm getting an echo.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, I'll talk through the echo. Okay, the world, you're pointing out something that's really important.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people that know about the grand conspiracy to some extent are still not on our side too much of the time. And why is because they don't understand how much control they have. And there's a old saying, the difference between greed and kind are entirely two different items. If you don't understand the degree of control of something, you really don't understand the kind. But the World Bank is part of the UN. It's part of the world government that's being formed. But I wanted to mention the digital currency. No, not currency, the ID. So one big way, if this is a protracted war, that very may will be intentionally, they could use that as an argument for going after terrorists that are in America, and we're all set up for false flags.
Yeah, right.
It doesn't have to be from Iran. It could be any Muslim countries that are supportive of them, and they have an event that's a false flag. And how are we going to stop them? We're going to need this ID so we know whether they're truly Americans or not. At what point, and we don't have time, I'm sure, to cover this. I have about 10 points about how this is really probably a war on America.
Right. I don't have time because there's a lot I want to get to, but I really appreciate it. But
the war on America, we need to talk about that later on.
All right.
Okay.
You got it. So I'm seeing a lot of clips on, say, Instagram and TikTok, and they're talking about, this is a diversion from the Epstein files. I actually don't think it is at all. I really don't. I think that the Epstein files in of itself is something that they have meddled with so much, whited out so much, that you'll never see the actual real files of really what's happening in the Epstein files. So how can it be a distraction if we're never going to see the whole thing? Okay. So I know people are saying that like crazy, but I don't actually believe that. I think that this in of itself is a big ticket item for the deep state. In fact, I think they realize that the Epstein files are there for a distraction because they're never going to give you the whole story, the real story. But I just wanted to clear that up because I think a lot of people
are still stuck on, well, this thing with Iran is just a distraction. There's way more here. And I want to talk about a deal with Saudi Arabia that's really important to understand as well. But since the mid 80s, I would say that your particular political Zionists, and those are the ones that pretend to be Jewish, okay, which the Jews should be very upset about. They should be pointing out these political Zionists all the time for lying and using them as cover, right, for whatever they want to do. But a lot of people confuse these terms of Zionists, and a lot of Christians think that the Zionists are great. No, the Zionists are the political Zionists are actually the liars. Those are the ones that pretend to be Jewish, but have a lot of control, and do so because they can do it by the cover of anti-Semitism. Okay. So since the 80s, they've been trying to push the U.S. into this war with Iran, right? And let me play this clip for you. This is Netanyahu, and this goes back from 1995. From 1995, okay? And then 2006, 2012, 2015, 2018, and 2025. Here we go.
Could produce a nuclear weapon in a very short time. It could be a year.
They have the wherewithal, the stored up, preserved knowledge to make a bomb very quickly if they wanted to.
Iran is so dangerous. Weeks away from having the fissile material for an entire arsenal of nuclear bombs.
They're very close. They're 6 months away from being about 90% of having the enriched uranium for an atom bomb. Iran is gearing up to produce 25 bombs, atomic bombs a year, 250 bombs in a decade. Iran will be capable of producing alone, without importing anything, nuclear bombs within 3 to 5 years. Once Saddam has nuclear weapons, the terror network will have nuclear weapons. The next thing you'll see is a nuclear bomb in the World Trade Center. If you take out Saddam's regime, I guarantee you that it will have enormous positive reverberations on the region.
If not stopped, Iran could produce a nuclear weapon in a very short time. It could be a year.
They have...
Yeah, we've been hearing this a long time. I think you get the gist. Okay, so it's getting ridiculous. All right, so then he was talking about taking out Saddam. Oh, Saddam, this will make a huge change. Has it? Now looking back, has it made a big change? No, not really. No, in fact, we're headed down the same path we always have been. So it really hasn't done anything, actually. And there's just so much more here. So let me get into this. So there was a meeting. President Trump had a meeting. The first, not the first trip to Saudi Arabia, but his last trip was November 18th. Okay, and 4 months ago. And Trump hosted the Crown Prince, right? And this was at the White House. And of course, they were discussing investment deals, defense discussions, strategic cooperation efforts, things like that. So the difference, with Iran and Saudi Arabia, it's a pretty stark difference. I mean, in fact, Iran is Shiite and Saudi Arabia is Sunni. Okay, so there's some big major differences there. But the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia pledged $600 billion into the United States over 4 years. And that was a transaction being made. That's not being talked about in the press. I'm not hearing it from anybody. And so Saudi Arabia has wanted this formal U.S. security guarantee, okay, similar to NATO, Article 5 for years. And Obama didn't do it. It's very strange kind of why we're doing it now, like what the timing is now. But this support, Saudi Arabia, it sounds like they wanted to enrich their uranium domestically, and that we have said, no, you can't do that, right? So if they were warning us that if Iran gets to build a nuke, they get to build a nuke, that kind of thing, okay? So we're talking about regional power, and we're talking about the next 20 years of the Middle East and what that looks like. But it looks like a lot of deals are being made that are much bigger than the Epstein files, if you will. So there's a lot of talk, especially just on the internet, of Saudi Arabia and Iran kind of doing this little Cold War since '79, right? I don't know how relevant that is, but it's kind of interesting, the different powers, right? And who's going to whom for more power.
And so during the first term, the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia didn't see huge responses from Trump, but in this term, he is maybe getting these deals done. So that's kind of an interesting component to all of this. And the bombing of Iran is kind of the proof that the security guarantee would be real for that deal, the $600 billion. What Saudi Arabia wanted in this deal was Iran's missile capability degraded, Iran's proxy network broken, and the U.S. will actually not just threaten, but will do something, right? And so then you have the Abraham Accords missing piece, and this is normalizing Israel with the UAE, the Bahrain, Morocco, Sudan. So in that equation, the Saudi Arabia is kind of missing in that equation. But the normalization with Israel is sort of this prize, right, that reshapes the Middle East. So Palestinians that causes them to lose their powerful, Arab advocate. And then you have Israel becoming their regional sort of legitimacy becoming irreversible. And then you have U.S. dominating Middle Eastern architecture, and you have China's attempt to broker influence. Okay. So you have all these things going on. So that's why I don't think it's a departure or distraction from Epstein files, since there's nothing that we're going to get that's going to be the smoking guns of the Israel thing, because there's a lot of Epsteins out there and they're doing a lot of evil. So Saudi Arabia's architecture in this agreement, in this deal, would be requiring high prices for oil where they're actually making money. So we bomb Iran, and then all of a sudden oil goes through the roof, and they're cutting in on that profit, okay, that profiteering. And so if Iranian oil infrastructure gets struck, you've got 3 million barrels a day removed from global supply, oil prices spike immediately, and Saudi Arabia goes in to fill the gap at premium prices. Okay. Then the $600 billion pledge becomes a lot more fundable. And the Crown Prince, he wants what he wants. So the U.S. approved $142 billion in arms sales to Saudi Arabia in that same trip, in that same week. And the American defense industry, Lockheed, Raytheon, all the same names, Boeing Defense, they're all government entities, okay? They're not private at all. And they need conflict to justify procurement. So they need threat environments to sell next generation systems. So there's a lot of profiteering being done right now. There's a lot of arms sales. Isn't it interesting? There's always arms sales at the crux of a lot of this going on, right? And so, a degraded but not completely destroyed Iran, right? You've got this permanent threat justification for continued Saudi arms purchases for decades. And so it's not really an investment. It's not generosity. It's like a structured payment plan for things given is really what it's about. Nuclear program approval, giving Saudi Arabia, and then also oil market positioning that would actually help them to profiteer. So there are a lot of things happening here. And that arms deal for the defense industry, you've got a lot of things going on that are signaling what it's going to look like for the future for the Middle East, right? Now, we all know in the Greater Zion program, and this started back in the 40s, that the goal was to extend Israel's terrain and territory into some of these other countries as well. So keep that in mind as I'm saying this. But there is another goal to obtain proxy control over Iran's oil and gas reserves, so they can be kind of weaponized as leverage, right? Maybe, possibly against China. And there's just, there's a lot happening here. All right. So I will take your questions if they're brief, but I wanted to kind of bring you a little bit from, most people aren't talking about this. And so I felt like, well, maybe we should entertain these ideas just to kind of get them rolling in our brains to kind of figure out if this is part of it. Now, I had Henry Makow on the show, like years ago, a couple of years ago. And he was such an interesting guest. Now, if you've ever read some of the works on his website, he's Jewish, but he's always pointing out the Zionists, the liars, right? The political Zionists. And this was kind of interesting. So I'm going to give you this because whether it's true or not, it is kind of compelling. I have to admit, kind of compelling. So the First World War was seeing the establishment of communism in Russia. That was World War I, right? And then a Second World War was going to extend its control over Europe. Okay. And then a Third World War would be necessary to make it worldwide. So the West is a decoy for the erection of the New World Order by the East after the defeat of the West in a world war. So World War III reprises World War II, where the communists sort of left off. Okay. So this is kind of interesting, but when you get into what these political Zionists are, into like the Jewish Freemasonry, you have the communists and the fascists, and they're like two wings of that. And they, these are not people you want to be associated with, right? A lot of satanic tyranny happening in these groups. But the alt media, what they want our alt media to do is to cast the East as the good guys. But in fact, Russia and China would have been tasked with installing the New World Order, right? And then we are being demoralized to embrace the saviors. The multipolar power is going to mask the usual suspects, and that it's basically going to invert the old images of the East and West so that the Western people lose their self-image of being moral and libertarian, right? And then this virtuous image being transferred to the East and West being imaged as despotic. So especially the USA. So the Israel-Iran conflict sets the stage for a Armageddon, which will usher in, right, the Antichrist. So we've talked about this on the show a little bit. We've had different guests on kind of talking about this. I know I did have a guest that talked about Prince Charles being that. I'm like, no, that's not. I don't think that's it. But the Russian Iranians are going to be portrayed as the white hats, while the Zionist-controlled U.S. will be the deranged aggressor. Remember how in the Greater Zion Project it was about sort of the world turning on Israel and USA because they represent themselves with a hyphen now. It's always USA-Israel, which is really strange whenever we're talking about the Middle East, and that this would be the ruining of our reputation, right, and destroying any goodwill that we did have, and that over the last 40 years, it would be working to turn the USA into the evil empire, right? As the Soviet Union was formerly portrayed. So it gets kind of interesting. I wanted to tell you about that because I did find it interesting. I did find it kind of strange. But you know what? There's some merit to it. So we'll go there, right? So I wanted to bring up China for just a moment because I wanted to give you the statement that Xi made in 2017. And when I said all of these powers are sort of working together behind the scenes, that we are not, like the boogeyman aren't the boogeymen. I want you to listen to this comment and then you tell me what you think, okay? Today, mankind, this is from Xi, 2017, World Economic Forum. Today, mankind has become a close-knit community of shared future. Countries have extensive converging interests and are mutually dependent, and all countries enjoy the right to development. At the same time, we should view their own interests in a broader context and refrain from pursuing them at the expense of others. We should adhere to multilateralism to uphold the authority and efficacy of multilateral institutions. Sounds a little New World Order-y to me. But anyway, we should honor promises, abide by rules, not select or bend rules. The Paris Agreement is a hard-won achievement. I did a show on the Paris Agreement. Doesn't have a whole lot of teeth, by the way, which is in keeping with the underlying trend of global development. See, he's all on board, global development. All signatories should stick to it instead of walking away from it. This is our responsibility. So does that actually exemplify some bad guy, or is this coming from somebody who's all aboard the World Bank train? I'm going to go with that one. 500, Alex. I'm going to go with that one. Yeah, it's basically to maybe finish off the moral reputation of the West, crush its spirit, have a scripted World War III scenario that will be the fault of the West. That is pretty widely talked about as far as what the Zionist plans are, and the Eastern design of that script, right, has been talked about a lot, and it really is to invert kind of the global look of these nations and our nation, and just kind of where we stand right now. It's very bizarre, but I wonder if we can kind of wrap our brains around that, because I think that, a lot of this started in the 40s when we had Bretton Woods, the World Bank, we had the CIA. After World War II was kind of bringing up this entire motion of the cabal. Like all of a sudden the cabal was in all these entities and going after all these different what were sovereign countries. And so there's a lot here to digest, I think, for people to kind of understand what the goals are in the future. But the Greater Israel Plan, I think, is should be pretty well known by now, I would think. Have you understood this? Have you thought about this? Who knows? But there are two distinct kind of Zionist traditions, and people really collapse them into one. So when we're talking about Zionists, what we probably should do is talk about the two different kinds. A lot of people don't realize that. You have your political Zionists, okay? And so that is a Jewish homeland for safety from persecution, okay? Genuinely maybe defensive in origin. Then and I really should have referred to the Zionists as the revisionist Zionists. But the revisionist Zionists are the ones that have the expansionist territory in mind. Those are the ones that are seeking to take over. So it is kind of interesting because when you have conversations with people, and I have, the disagreement is over what a Zionist is, because a lot of our Christians, and I'm Christian, think that that the Zionists are a good thing. And so there's several different groups within this. And so you have your political Zionists who wanted a homeland, but remember the homeland that is designed for them was designed for them by the Rockefellers. Okay, so interesting. And then you have your revisionist Zionism. So the second one is what drives Greater Israel ideology. Okay, so this architecture that came about, right, is it's about the Arab population never voluntarily accepting a Jewish state. Therefore, a Jewish state must be built behind an iron wall. And that basically when it was put together, the negotiation with Arabs was theater until maybe the Israeli military dominance became absolute. Because if you really look at it, Israel is known to have nukes. They have their nukes, right? They have 400 warheads or something. But some of the other countries, from what we have been told, do not have that capability, right? So Iran, Saudi, they don't have that capability, but Israel does. So that's kind of an interesting piece of this too. Their view in the revisionist Zionists was land acquisition is never final. It's always a stepping stone. And that only from a position of total military superiority can we position ourselves and can any settlement occur. So I think separating those would probably be a good idea for people so they can really understand what's happening over there. When I played that clip of Netanyahu talking about Iran's this close, 90%, that was 30 years ago. Okay. So the same song and dance over and over and over again, right? And more money flowing into Israel and more alliances with Israel and US and Israel becoming basically one, kind of like Mossad and CIA are one. So that should actually make people kind of pause, right? Because we're a show about looking at the truth, not being on a side. Obviously not a leftist because I'm a conservative, but on the right, where do we make mistakes? We're in our thinking about what's actually happening over there. So when this took place, obviously you had about almost 1 million Palestinians displaced in 1948. And the establishment of the ground that exceeded the UN boundaries, and there were about 400 Arab villages destroyed or depopulated when that happened. So that's a fact. So where you stand on it because of emotion doesn't really matter when you look at what actually happened to create that. So how is Netanyahu using that for his purposes, right? How is it being used to profiteer, to make deals, to expand land in the Middle East, right, for certain agendas? And I think that's probably one of the most important things people could really try to understand in this, is that there's a lot of people that I think, they want to go to the Bible and they just want to say biblically that that we should just rah for Iran's government no matter what. Now, I'm not talking about the people, I'm talking about the government. That anything the government does, it's just in defense of their country. But remember that this all took place because Israel made the first move on Iran. So as conservatives, I mean, I don't know how you can just dismiss that, because it's not dismissible. So when we're looking at the future of what they want, and by the way, I am taking calls, 435-680-2503. Of course, you can call in. You have to, I think we have to have kind of a come to Jesus, to moment to understand how things are used, why things are used, okay? And where we're going with this. Because is digital ID a part of it? A part of it, yes, but there's also a lot going on with all of this too. I mean, yeah, we're going towards digital ID, but I don't think Iran is the holdout because they're a member of the World Bank. I don't think they're a holdout. Possibly, but I don't think so. Hi, caller. Welcome to the show. Go right ahead.
Hey, greetings, Kate.
Hi.
Off the subject of what I was going to ask, I just did a search about the Palestinians and their bloodline, and are they connected to Abraham? And according to AI, they are Levantine. They are from the bloodline of Abraham. And so many people claim to be Semitic or pro-Semitic. Well, if they actually were, they would be supporting Palestinians, but they don't. So that's kind of a conundrum. Also, down in Florida, there's a law now that if you deny the Holocaust, that's a felony. That could literally put you in state prison.
It's crazy. And we never talk about the Holodomor, ever.
Well, they're laying this out. Their congressman down there, the guy named Randy Fine, he talked on the radio the other day about them deporting Americans. Literally, they're laying the foundation to deport everybody that doesn't take, number one, a loyalty up to Israel, and number two, they got to claim to be a U.S. citizen, not an American, citizen of the corporate United States. In other words, surrender your right and take up the privileged class of slave.
Right.
So,
okay. Anything else you want to say?
A lot, but you got a lot to say.
No, it's fine. It's fine. I just, I think it's all kind of compelling if people are going to actually try to address the truth instead of just what their party thinks. It's so interesting to me because I see the leftists throw in the whole entire country. I see the right giving everything Israel does as a pass. And I'm sitting over here thinking, do we realize what is in the agendas of the New World Order? Do we realize like what the goals are in the future? And I think we're just getting a lot of weird, weird messaging going on right now. And no one can really define what's happening right now. So I do think that's kind of interesting too. No one can really actually go, well, why are we doing this? There isn't really a solid answer for that, which is kind of strange, don't you think? It is kind of weird.
You remember back in 9/11 when they literally they flipped the narrative. The day one, it's the Saudi attackers with box cutter, and then a week later, we're going into Iraq. Well, wait a minute, what about Saudi? We're going into Iraq. You know, so you got whiplash there. Well, just yesterday, and I like Dr. Duke. Okay, I like the guy. He cracks me up a lot of times. But anyway, he said that they had all these ICBMs, intercontinental ballistic missiles. They don't have any. Now, they do have ballistic missiles, but not intercontinental. So on the mainstream media, where they've been saying ICBMs, today they're backed off. Now they're just saying ballistic missiles. So there's a difference. They don't have the ability to reach out and touch us.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay.
But they wanted you to believe that before they launched the attack. They wanted the people to believe that they could actually attack America, and they can't.
Well, I like the phone call. Thank you for that. Appreciate it. You know, it's tough. It's tough because everything is so polarized. Everything is so in the party, whatever the party thinks, whatever the party is dialed in to do, whatever whatever messaging they want to lead out. It's tough because I don't see a ton of people like really seriously seeking out the truth of what's going on and why. And I think there are bigger deals being made. I think that there's a lot more to this. And when Israel struck first, that should say a lot. That should say a lot about the messaging coming out of the government of Israel. And what's funny is people on the right have a super hard time questioning the goals of Israel. And I don't know why that is, because we live in a time when obviously the governments are taken over. We're depositing the people that we want, right? So the CIA is very, very busy with all the other intelligence agencies partnering up to install the leaders of their choice. Now, can they completely control somebody? Does somebody go rogue? Sure, that can happen. And I think they get rid of them. I do. And then they install the next person. But when you look at the members of the World Bank and you're really truly looking at how they all show up for these meetings and how compliant everyone was in COVID and going right along with the program, it was kind of interesting. Did you guys realize that terrorism completely and totally removed itself and went away? 100% went away. During COVID, and no one ever talks about that. No one ever talks about it. And I don't know why that is, because that should be very obvious to people that things are by design. If you were a terrorist, the time when you would actually try to strike would be when everyone's vulnerable. But they're not so terroristy. when they're afraid of the sniffles. And so when they're told by the powers that be how they have to act during COVID. Okay. So even Iran, the rogue state of Iran, completely complied with everything. Not even a question. Okay. And I'm sorry, but if you had an ounce of logic, you could see that once the world media was parroting each other and they couldn't even identify what the cases were actually, what COVID actually was, and there wasn't an actual strain of COVID actually identified, that if you were a rogue nation that was not controlled, you would have been questioning that. I'm sorry. Just what happened. But Iran was fully on board, 100%. In fact, almost 20 of their politicians and leaders died, right? As through the COVID government inspired and mandated their protocol. So you had almost 20 people. So was that sort of a washing out of people that they didn't want? Or that the deep state didn't want in power because maybe they went a little rogue? Hard to know. But I thought it was very interesting that the terrorists took a nice big break. That's why when I say we control ISIS and Hamas and that these entities are controlled. If we want to think they're terrorist, I think they're very, very controlled. I think that you kind of have to start recognizing that when you see the compliance happening and you see people joining the World Bank. So when Iran joined the World Bank, it was right about the time that our CIA, installed the Shah. Okay. And they had their Soviet special forces, kind of like our FBI, going on. There were some good things that the Shah did within the country of Iran, but then they had this murdering group, walking around and doing what they were doing. But all I'm saying is that you look back on the history of the people that joined the World Bank, and I'm pretty sure that there's hardly anyone that's not a member now. Right. So it's hard to know, as far as like, I just think that once we did the Bretton Woods, once we established that we were going to be regions through that Bretton Woods, because that was part of the deal, was you got to make the EU a region. We got to make America, Greenland, Canada, and Mexico a region. Got to make all these regions. This is more about what's going on with Iran. It's deals. It's oil, it's arms sales, it's keeping the entities that make those arms right at the helm of the profiteering, and then it's a territorial gain. So that's why I say it has nothing really to do with the Epstein files and a distraction from the Epstein files, because this is really their target. So Epstein files, they're just pushing that out for whoever wants to peruse them, but nothing will ever happen with anything because they're not going to show you the real stuff. I'm pretty sure some of that is doctored. So they've had a lot of time to work on it over a decade. So I'm pretty sure that that's the case on that. And it's not a distraction from anything. This is the deal. This is the real deal. There's territory to be gained. There is digital ID to put in, yes, but I actually do think Iran will go along with it. I do. I think Iran will go along with the digital ID. I don't think there's going to be leakage there. And I know Catherine Austin Fitts was saying that to Tucker Carlson, but I actually don't think that's it all the way. Is it to demonize the West? I actually think it might be. I think there's a lot there that makes more sense to me because of the way this is going down. It's like look at it this way. President Trump was like, we're going to take Greenland. We're going to take Cuba. We're going to take Canada. We're going to make them, they're voting on their freedom, right? We're going to take them kind of state by state. It's very, what's the word? It gets us to think that it's okay. Why? Because he was the martyr going into office. So if he's the martyr going into office and he is posing as a person that's saying, I'm going to get rid of the deep state, but it's not. We haven't gotten rid of the deep state. Okay. We have to look at this with the facts that we have not gotten rid of the deep state at all. In fact, we're growing it as we speak, but it's getting us used to hearing that those countries are there for the taking and that we have the role to do it, that it's actually okay to do. And so I think that we need to look at a lot of this as far as the expansion goes and what they want to have happen. And I don't think you can deny that, right? So in 1967, when they did the 6-Day War, that was a capture. It was a capture for Israel. They captured the Sinai Peninsula, the Gaza Strip, the West Bank, including East Jerusalem and the Golan Heights. Okay. The 6-Day War, I mean, it's very interesting to go back and really look at what happened there, but it seemed to move forward. So that's why I say I don't know if you can actually deny that project is happening right in front of us. I don't think you can deny that because you've had different events happen along the way, like the 1967 event that actually where they gained more ground. Okay. And don't forget when Ron Paul stood up in Congress, I said this yesterday too, and said, hey, basically, Israel created Hamas as their bad guy. And it was a drive to say, hey, see, they're constantly after us and we need more money and we need nukes, and we need all of these things so that we can be protected. Because in those clips by Netanyahu, and by the way, Netanyahu's full Mossad, by the way, is saying, oh, it's for our protection, our protection, our protection. So kind of interesting. Again, the Jewish people, fine. It's the Jewish government. It's the ones pretending. And I think they should constantly be pointed out. But in the media, and I was told this in talk radio when I first started out, that 16 years ago, don't ever talk about Israel or you'll be off the air. Interesting. And I was censored. So there you go. Yeah. There were documents basically in the 1982 Regional Strategy Plan. Okay. This was the 1982 document. I talked about 1967. This is the 1982 document. And this was a journal of the World Zionist Organization. And their core thesis was this, that the Arab states are artificially colonial constructs held together by force, and apply pressure along ethnic and sectarian fault lines, and they will fracture naturally. So a fragmented Arab world means no unified military threat to Israel, no coordinated economic pressure, no credible political challenge to territorial expansion, that they would just go along with it, and permanent regional dominance by Israel. And the document specifically identified, 1982 document, that Iraq should be split into Shia, Sunni, and Kurdish states, Syria fragmented along with, the Sunni and Druze lines, Lebanon already fractured, Egypt destabilized via the Sinai and Coptic tensions, right? Saudi Arabia split along regional lines, and Iran is the final strategic challenge. So if you look at a map of the Middle East in 2024 versus 1982, you're going to find that Iraq functionally fractured through the Iraq War. Remember, that was the product of 9/11, and that wasn't even the country to target. Okay. Syria fragmented, right? Assad, Russia's holding Assad, right? He's there in Russia, supposedly. We haven't seen him for years. Libya, failed state. They took out Gaddafi. We took out Gaddafi. Lebanon, perpetually destabilized. And Yemen, destroyed. And Iran is still standing, okay? But I do think, being part of the World Bank, we actually have more control than we're alluding to. And I think that's one of the lies that we're being told. But, anyone can argue with me. It's fine. I'm looking at all these pieces and going, how in the world can they be this rogue entity that everyone talks about as being rogue? It doesn't even make any sense. So just to kind of give you that, I'll tell you, I think it's really hard to dial in and identify a lot of these things, because the first thing that people want to say is that you are an anti-Semite. Even mentioning all of this, you are an anti-Semite. Okay. And I'm really pretty sure that that has nothing to do with pointing out the truth. You have to be able to identify the truth, come to this reasonable understanding of what has taken place through facts, and then say to yourself, okay, so what are we being told in the media? Okay. The media isn't talking about any of this ever. They never would, right? They're the ones that brought you COVID and go get the shot, right? And that you're in mortal danger. So over the sniffles, so over the flu. So you're not going to get the truth from the media, but you've been told media lies for a really long time. And somehow it's, brainwashed a lot, but this is a plan that has been in the works for so long, and it's been actually coming to fruition. It's actually been happening. So I guess we can pretend that everyone is still after Israel, and that Israel has to do all of these preliminary, preemptive strikes and all these things. But even if I go back to October, wasn't it the October 7th thing? Nothing gets through their wall. No piece of paper gets through that wall without them knowing it. They have a lot of money for a lot of defense. And so I do think that was a false flag. So now it's about, is there a false flag coming? And I'm probably going to say yes on that a false flag would probably be in the works, actually. Yeah, I do. I have, so yeah, I do actually think it's in the works. I have some questions. Am I still on the air? I think I am. Yeah, I think it's still live. Anyway, is that the case, right? Well, it would be a good excuse at this point. It would be a really good excuse to say, well, they're retaliating, but actually it would be our CIA doing the retaliating. It wouldn't be them. And this is why when you look back over 40 years, Iran hasn't struck, because they know that they're cornered. So this is why you haven't gotten a strike. This is exactly why, and why they weren't going to, but always the threat of it's going to happen, right? So the preemptive strike. So I think it would probably be really good for everybody if we sort of took in all this information and thought, okay, where are we headed? What's the agenda? Why are we in this state of crazy? Why are we, why is the media stopping short of talking about arms deals and terrain and territory and all of these things? And why doesn't anyone do a deep dive, right, on any of this? Like you're just not going to find it. But you're also not going to find it on the right or the left. So that's why it gets a little crazy out there, folks. But I did want to bring some of those things to you so we could kind of see a pattern of what's been happening since Bretton Woods, since 1944, since we started throwing everyone into the World Bank, and Russia's in the World Bank, China's in the World Bank, Iran's in the World Bank. There you go. All right. So I did want to bring on Susan. Susan, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing great today, Kate. How are you?
Awesome. I was just kind of going through maybe what some of the plans are, because if it's to demonize the West, I can surely see that happening. And that was in the greater Zionist plan. And those are the Zionists pretending to be the Jews. And so that would be, it's very interesting to kind of watch through the years and to see that plan progress, and no one ever talks about it ever. And I was told in radio, you never can talk about that, or otherwise you're out. So it's kind of interesting to reflect on all of that and then say, okay, what's happening now? So, gotta go there.
I do think people are becoming more sophisticated about that. There's a real interest in saying, what are additional motivations? Like if we're told one motivation by the press, we might not say that's an incorrect motivation. We're starting to say, what are additional motivations? And there can be motivations hiding other motivations. And I think that's where people have started to think a little more with a little more sophistication, but that people don't always have just one motive to do something.
Right.
And I think, you could be right. I was just reading, it reminded me that I had this thought. I was just reading that they were preserving the Brady Bunch house as a historic house.
Now that's a segue.
I know. Well, and
the
I
Brady
thought,
Bunch house? Yeah.
you don't always hear about cathedrals or some of these older buildings being honored anymore. In fact, there's cathedrals being turned, in old churches being turned into housing and all sorts of things, commercial space, because those aren't valued in the same way anymore. And I thought, rally around the secular TV thing, but the older architecture just doesn't seem as, significant. And again, that could be because we are in, the West of the United States.
Yeah.
There's more church buildings that are of unique building in the eastern part of the United States. Even in Europe, churches are being sold for mosques, to be turned into places of Islamic worship. And that's a hard pill to swallow.
It is here in America. I don't want to see it. Yeah.
It's just, I'm sure you've seen those little clips of what Iran used to look like and now what it does look like with women just completely covered head to toe. Did you know that women who are covered in these head to toe burqas or whatever, they're called other things, they have higher rates of breast cancer because their skin is literally not exposed. It's not getting
I would imagine.
vitamin D.
Yeah, because the sun is good.
The sun is really good. The sun is so good. I just read another article about a woman who travels in her 90s, and she said, my number one health recommendation is sunshine. She goes, sunshine keeps me healthy.
That's true. I mean, I don't doubt that the women are having so many. I wouldn't want to be a woman in Iran. I do think that we installed Khomeini. I do think that they did a media blitz and campaign. The New American, I talked about this yesterday, but the New American laid that out pretty great and said, look, we installed Khomeini and villainized the Shah to do it, and that Khomeini they knew would come in with harsher and so I don't doubt that it has become what it has become. So I'm not saying that's theater. I just think that we have more control because over it, because what we're trying to say is they are rogue and they're acting like that. But I actually think that that was the desired outcome, because when you have a bad guy, you have to make that bad guy real, right? And so the bad guy has to retain the bad guy status, and they're not going to do it by treating women with freedom. So they are very oppressive because that's the goal, is for them to be oppressive. Still doesn't mean that we didn't put Khomeini in to do it, so that we could utilize this rogue nation for 40 years of headlines of they're coming after us, they're going to get us, they're going to nuke us, and they're going to nuke Israel, and how often that has been said. As I played the clips, how often that is said in the press. So they have utilized this bad Iran. They've utilized it to their, to get where we're at today. Yeah, for an advantage. And if you have a greater Zion program that is going to extend out and take over areas, you can kind of see how that's progressed even from 1967. You can see how the land and territory have expanded themselves. But what's crazy is that people still have a hard time kind of not seeing the connections between all the world leaders. I've been showing pictures of Kissinger and China and Rockefeller and Putin and Kissinger, and they're all buddies. I mean, this is a buddy network. So the fact that we pretend that we have these bad guys, I'm hoping people can kind of see through it a little bit. They're all members of the World Bank. And once that happened, that kind of is a big tell. It's a big show. And it's basically saying they're on board. They're on board. They were all on board in COVID. They're all on board for everything that they get told to be on board for. So I don't know. The expansion and threat of Iran is there for a solid reason, and that is for Israel to expand. That's the goal. It's to take over that entire area. So I don't know that anyone can say that's not true, because it's been happening. It's in the facts. It's actually documented. So I'm not sure anyone can say that. But I don't doubt for a second that Iran is oppressive. I just think that was the goal, to make them more of a threat so that they could have the desired outcome for the project. Does that make sense?
Well, it makes sense when people start noticing, is this all it took to get rid of him? Like, why have we been in this struggle? Like, we went in and plucked out Maduro. Yes. Was it a high stakes operation? Yes. But we're the United States. We know how to do those things. And we've done it with Noriega. So what happened here? I'm reading the shock in people who are like, wait, it was that easy to accomplish in such a short time. And now they're saying, well, why are all these countries in the Gulf being attacked? And they were pointing out how you had a Persian government that was taken over by the Shiites, and the rest of them are Sunni. There are Shiites in Iraq, but very few now. And so So you're right. Things were set up at odds, but when Trump seemed to set this up, they collapsed. I was listening to a clip by Scott Bissett that I think I sent you by email, but he just said, "Oh yeah, we started this back in November. We just
right when Saudi Arabia met with President Trump over investment deals and the 600 billion and the arms deals, 142 billion in arms."
He said we started collapsing, and then they had to print. They had an emergency. They had to print all this money. Inflation skyrocketed in Iran, and he goes, and that was just to soften them up. And I was like, oh my gosh, they were able to do this in just a few months, and then collapse their economy essentially. So a lot of people started asking, well, then why haven't we done this all along? We were able to do this with money, and look what Obama did, delivering pallets of cash, right? So it's all very suspect that it was a cleanup operation that happened fairly quickly.
Well, it depends on how I think you define cleanup. So, Venezuela, he was our guy. He was CIA. He was a known intelligence asset when he was installed, married to an intelligence asset. And by the way, no talk of him lately, right? So trials and everything else, no talk lately of that. But anyway, so he's our guy, and Noriega was our guy. We have Iran, and I think the guys there are very, very controlled. The MEK is very controlled over in Iran, right? CIA assets. Yeah. And so whether these people go rogue or not could be the question, I guess, if I was going to play devil's advocate and they take them out. But as far as it goes, they have their guys in. And I think that there's always going to be a level of drama taking place so that we're assured that they're truly who we say they are and that we don't actually have that kind of control. But I think we do. So when I'm looking at it, I'm looking at, okay, why was that asset removed? Instead of, this person was just taken out. Why was the asset removed? Because he was clearly an asset. So I don't know. It's just it's very, very strange, and it's been going on so long in our society. So.
Well, it does seem to be like a rearranging of chess pieces on a chessboard. And there's ways to take people out that are, people can just go missing. People could have had a heart attack and die in office. But instead, we go in and do some big operation like with Noriega. And so and Maduro and not very subtle. So, but Trump did talk about how he left the rest of the government in Venezuela intact. He said, unlike what happened in Iraq, where they fired everybody and then those people joined ISIS, he said, I left everybody intact here in Venezuela, the vice president on down. And you think, well, they're all just falling in line. And so it does bring up a lot of questions about how do things really work?
Well, okay, for instance, Saudi Arabia hit a day ago. Okay. And this was a text that came in. Let me address that. So they confirmed that the U.S. embassy was attacked by 2 drones, causing a limited fire, minor material damage. All right. So that's probably the most that's going to happen. They have to appear to be a threat. They have to have this theater, because if they don't have the theater, then they can't create this project and they can't create these wars. So they have to. But what I'm saying is it was very minor. And I think that's by design. It's kind of like the reason, if you go to World War II, we had our people over there in Germany, but those stations were never hit. Isn't that interesting? No, our stations were never hit in Germany. How did that survive? It's a miracle. It's not a miracle. I actually think it's by design. And I think that they have it look like the theater of it to say, well, see, everyone's under attack. Kind of like what was going after Turkey, right? So same exact thing. It's all the theater of it. They have to look like they're attacking everybody so that they can get attacked, right? So that Israel attacks them even harder, and same with the USA. Same with us. I don't know.
It is amazing. You're right.
Nothing major.
Why wouldn't
Yeah.
we have stopped? Why would we have not stopped those small drones that clearly would have the coordinates of where those facilities are? Why wouldn't there
Yeah,
have been
I mean, the
better
CIA
protection?
station at the U.S. Embassy in Saudi Arabia gets hit. I mean, that's coincidental.
I was surprised. I was
Mm,
surprised. But
yeah.
and that's why honestly
By
it's
design.
hard. It's hard to follow. It's hard to follow the
Mhm.
war because you don't know
hmm
what motives, additional motives people have
Yeah.
for things to happen. And
Mhm.
the rest, I mean,
Mhm.
for my whole life, I just watched a war as reported through the major networks,
Mhm.
took everything at face value, took
Mhm.
every word they said
know.
at face value, and never questioned it, never
Mhm.
looked deeper,
Right.
and never really looked at the players or the funders
hmm
ever.
I know.
And so it's, I think it was Noriega. There was
Mhm.
something called the School of the Americas, which was in the United States, and
Mhm.
it developed those assets and trained them on how to be dictators and how to crush opposition and how to do all those things. And,
Yeah.
torture classes, et cetera, et cetera. And those were our guys and we trained them. So,
Well, I
I
mean,
didn't find that out till much later.
yeah. I mean, look at Venezuela, right? 4 costume changes. Thank you for mentioning that, Angel. It's the 4 costume changes. I mean, I think there's so much out there that speaks to the theater of all of this and the ramping up of this theater. And then you always have to ask about timing and why. But and that's another whole component to this. But it's just strange that we're in this capacity this year, and everyone was so happy, right, at having President Trump go in. The problem is that we don't realize how controlled the presidency is. So when we're doing all of this and we take Venezuela and we want to take Cuba and we want to take Greenland and we want to take Canada and we want to do all of this, and we want to take Iran, it's getting it sanctioned by the people of America to believe that this is fixing the New World Order and this is ousting the New World Order, and that we're finally getting our due and that things are going right now and we're making everybody free. And that's like the biggest lie ever. It does not make anyone free. If you want to make us free, then undo the spying network, the flock cameras, the digital apparatus that's being laid down as we speak, because that is the only thing that is going to free us or free anybody in the world. They're going for complete world control. And if you don't think the presidency is controlled, then it's so crazy to me how people just can't understand how controlled it is. And these are the big ticket items. The big ticket items are being fulfilled. So it's wild out there. And we need our freedom, but we're not getting that freedom because we're not ending anything here. We're just expanding. And I don't know how to get people to think about this. It's
we are
crazy.
expanding, and we're expanding surveillance. And, when you mentioned the flock cameras, I was just reading about how Meta has sold so many of their glasses, their camera glasses. And they're saying that those glasses are broadcasting what
Right.
people are seeing.
Right.
And so people, I think it was in Korea, like it's getting uploaded to much bigger networks, not necessarily by the person wearing the glasses,
Right.
but it's like in their
Right.
contract. So
Right.
when they buy the glasses, they sign off on the fact it's the super long contract and you sign it, but things are getting caught, like people going to the bathroom and people engaged in sexual behavior that is inadvertent. And they're people changing their socks, and it's all getting uploaded and transmitted.
And they own it forever. On the flock cameras, it's in perpetuity. It's forever. No one can revoke their data. You can't get out of it once that's installed. So there's a lot going on as far as apparatus being laid. And we're not talking about that. We're always talking about, and it's not when I say distraction, it's like both are real. The territory thing, the war going on, right? That is all real. The apparatus of spying is real. It's all real. And but it's just not, the apparatus never gets talked about.
No, and that is that structural apparatus. So here was the article. Meta sold 7 million Ray-Ban smart glasses in 2025 alone, and workers in Kenya are watching the footage. Not metadata, not like clips that are made anonymous, the actual videos, people in dressing, people in bathrooms, bank cards, medical documents, anything that you would look at with your glasses on, right? And it says the people getting caught up in this, there was supposed to be blurring, and that blurring is supposed to protect privacy, but it's failing constantly.
Right.
The contractors are seeing everything. And it said the irony is that you as a spectator, an innocent person, did not buy the glasses. You didn't agree to the terms of service.
Right.
You didn't consent to anything, but it's all getting automatically uploaded. So the person wearing the glasses is the one who consented. But Meta's defense is that this is all disclosed in the privacy policy. They're technically correct, but it's buried in language. You know, we all sign those things. We all click the box. We don't even click the box. And, you know, the users never even read it, much less the people who the glasses are focused upon. So now they're pointing out, we thought flock cameras were bad. Millions of AI-enabled cameras are now walking around in public, recording constantly, uploading to servers.
And cities across America and counties are just fine with it. They don't try to stop it at all. And they could. They still could. They still have some sovereignty left. They could exercise it, but they won't, and they don't.
No. And they said, this isn't a bug. You know, Meta's acting like, oh, this is a bug. It's the business model was to collect everything.
Yeah.
And now even more people are buying those. So the glasses are selling faster than ever. And all the contractors just keep watching all the raw data, and collecting everything, every place you go from your point of view.
Right.
Which it's like having activated 7 million spies, right? 7 million data collectors. So if we thought our phone was listening in, if we thought our phone was, you know, uploading our conversations, this is literally the first person eyewitness uploading experiences.
By the way, I just wanted to let everyone know I got a text. I got a text from Trump. From Trump's people. Iran wanted to bring death to America. I had to activate Operation Epic Fury. Will you stand strong with me?
That's simple.
Let me just say again, because I said this on yesterday's show, when somebody says death to America, you can say that all day long. I can sit there and say, I hate China. Okay. It doesn't mean I'm doing anything to China. It's all perceived. So if you notice in that message, there wasn't a definite action. It was Iran wanted to bring death to America. See, there was no plan to do that. There was no action. There was nothing there, because I want to go from what is truth and what is perception. Okay. And so he said, I had to activate Operation Epic Fury. Okay. Based on what? And this circles back to the beginning of the show. Why? So we're given what Iran wanted to do, what Iran thinks about, what Iran says, but none of that is action and hasn't been for 45 years. So at this point, you know, I'm not sure that even if saying death to America, as I think that was actually created by the Greater Zionist Project, to tell you the truth, and that phrase, and then of course they said it, but I don't think, I mean, obviously for 45 years, it hasn't brought them to do anything, to do something big, right, against anybody. But because of that, it becomes like thought crime, like it's a perceived, oh, they want to do something to us. See, we can, now we have justification.
Yeah. Well, my understanding was that Bibi Netanyahu told Trump they were going to do something, and that they knew Iran would retaliate in ways against the U.S.
So are you expecting a false flag? Are you expecting a false flag?
No. And so
Israel,
if Israel said, we're definitely going to go do something against Iran, and then Iran is going to attack the U.S., and Trump said, well, then I guess I have justification for, pre-defense, doing the defense first, because we know Israel was definitely going to attack. So we needed to preemptively.
But they haven't really identified that, though. They haven't.
I heard that whole argument, and I thought, okay, that is how we got roped into doing this. And frankly, you're younger than me, but I was 19 when the whole Iranian crisis went down, and we've been tortured with this for all these years. You want to say, so maybe this is the psychological apparatus, that it's a relief to hear something different. Now rockets are falling and things are happening, but to have that bubble burst of this is no longer the establishment and something else is going to be the pattern, it does psychologically feel like a relief. Now that could be manipulation, right?
Yeah. I think it is.
We lived with it for so long, and then told our gas prices were going up higher because of it. I don't know if you covered this, that Trump announced that the U.S. insurance was going to be underwriting for all maritime trade flowing through the Gulf and the Straits of Hormuz, and it had been Lloyd's of London insuring ships for 300 years. And what happened was the ships just put down their anchors, not because they were being attacked, but because Lloyd's of London informed them their insurance rates had just skyrocketed. And so they said, well, we're not going to pay that insurance. We're just going to anchor where we're at. And so President Trump stepped in and said, our government will underwrite all maritime trade flowing through the Gulf, and we're not going to charge those exorbitant fees. And so now and he said, if necessary, this is what he put out. Trump said, effective immediately, I've ordered the United States Development Finance Corporation, DFC, to provide at very reasonable price political risk insurance and guarantees for the financial security of all maritime trade, especially energy traveling through the Gulf. This will be available to all shipping lanes. And he posted on Truth Social, if necessary, the United States Navy will begin escorting tankers through the Strait of Hormuz as soon as possible. No matter what, the United States will ensure the free flow of energy to the world. The United States' economic and military might is the greatest on earth. More actions to come. And so, we took that over after 300 years from Lloyd's of London, and we did that March 3rd. So that was yesterday. So, it's interesting to see developments, like what has shifted. We have now just guaranteed the safety. And I wonder why previous presidents have not done that. They let us suffer just exorbitant oil rates and said, oil prices, and said the strait's closed and we can't get people through and it's too dangerous. They let us just suffer with that.
I don't know. To me, it almost sounds like a move that is putting us squarely in the middle so that we are deeply entrenched in this. And that when people say, why are we part of it? We can say, well, they hit our ships, bringing them through, and we're squarely in the middle. Because right now people are asking a good question, and that is, why are we so involved in this over there? And so, of course, that would be a reason to kind of squarely put us in the fight so that people stop asking that question, which I don't, putting ourselves in that fight, I'm not quite sure. I don't know. It just is very, very strange. And also, we were talking about the story of preemptive strike, and how justified this was. But we heard the same thing with Iraq. We heard the same thing with Syria. We heard the same. Their script is getting used over and over and over again. So I hope we're seeing that as well, because it is a script. And I don't feel like there's anything, just because they say it, just because they say that we're under threat, a threat is a threat until it's an action. But I would imagine that I'm just surprised that more people aren't going, but who struck who first? I mean, this is kind of strange that we're saying defensive move, but it's not really a defensive move. And Like, again, I said this yesterday, I don't want to live in Iraq. I understand what the deep state has done with Iraq and where they've gone with Iraq. I don't want to live in Iran, I'm sorry, and live in Iran. At the same time, though, we have to be able to look at this with eyes wide open to all the previous scripts that have played out, that have not played out well. Look at Iraq. It's a mess. So I'm just, I don't know. This seems
skeptical.
very similar. Yes. And I don't like the constant use of preliminary thought crime attack. Like that's just not okay. Because we're really getting used to that in society. We're saying, oh, well, if you can stop a killer because you know he might do something, then do it. But it's not even in the act of doing anything. So I think that we're leaning towards thought crime, no matter what it is, country to country, person to person. I just think thought crime is not okay. Because now anyone can be accused of thought crime, right?
Yeah.
So, and any country.
And we're taking out of, Russia and China's proxies. I was listening to a woman who gets her intel from China. So again, you don't know if it's propaganda. You can't tell anything from any of this, but it's interesting to at least hear what they're trying to communicate. And she was just saying that they had in China that she and his entourage were able to look at video of what had happened to the Ayatollah, and that he was deeply shaken, that it was unexpected that the United States would go in and just do this so quickly, and that it would happen so fast. And so the press in China is now coming out mentioning how the power of China is the people's democracy, all these mentions of democracy in China. And she said it's being done to psychologically quell the impulse and urge for more freedom in China, because they see, if there's liberation movements, or people will appear in media to be more free now that the Ayatollah is dead, is that going to spur this democracy desire in China? And so there's all this concern and pressure, and China's oil has been affected, their oil supply. So it's interesting to see, because Trump has taken harsh measures towards China. He's also, I don't know if people noticed this, that when the Supreme Court knocked down his tariffs, he had all these different tariffs on different countries, who was cooperating, who was not cooperating, and they struck that down 6-3. And he was very angry at certain of the conservatives he'd put into the Supreme Court. But he said, fine, we'll just put a 10% tariff on all countries. Then he came out a very short while later, it may have been the same day, and said, no, 15% on all countries. And what Scott Bessent just said is that should be knocked down back to the original tariffs by August of this coming year. So they're playing like keys on a keyboard. They're hitting certain things. They're trying certain things. Not to say that it isn't causing angst and anxiety with the powers that be, but you really haven't heard much about Ukraine lately, have you? And you really haven't heard much about Russia lately.
It is. It's totally fake.
Well, and the thing about Iran is Russia, if there was escalation between Israel and Iran in the past, there would be all these mentions of Putin, threatening the West, that there would be consequences if they attacked Iran. And I'm thinking Putin seems very quiet, I don't see his quotes in the press. I don't see, because he always piped up in the past on Iran. And where is he? What's going on? I thought something.
I don't know. They're all part of the World Bank, so I can't imagine. I mean, I think they pipe up when they're supposed to or being told. Right. I don't know, but we'll when I talked about earlier the deal with Saudi Arabia that just took place in November, $600 billion. This deal for arms at 142 billion, and then you have the money. And also what's been happening with Saudi Arabia, we're talking about instability for the next 20 years, creating more instability over there for the next 20 years, because what they're saying is we get nukes if Iran gets nukes, right? But that's kind of interesting because Israel's the only one with the nukes over there. So what we're basically doing, the plan is to demonize the West, and have us look like the aggressor to the rest of the world, and to also create major instability over there, and more war. And then you have to say, well, who benefits off of that? And then on top of that, also, you got to have a reason for gas price, for the economy to still suck and suck for a continuous amount of time now. So this will all be blamed for the economy. So the economy not getting better, and people being paycheck to paycheck, and having things not in a great place right now. I know we keep getting told it's great, but it's not that great. Then now we're going to have the higher oil prices, so even higher prices and more inflation. And they've already told us that. And when I saw that article yesterday, I thought, okay, that's one of the reasons, is so that there's a reason for
as a cover story.
Yeah.
For the underlying,
for the inflation and the prices. Yes. Yeah. That it's not coming to an end. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So it's very interesting. Well, I wanted to talk today, if we can, about manipulation and PR. And there was an article in the Bureau for Investigation of Journalism. They do acknowledge in this that they have taken money from Bill Gates, but they go after him. And this is the name of the article: a London PR firm rewrites Wikipedia for governments and billionaires. So they did an investigation into Wikipedia, and they start off by saying that it is the largest collection of information in human history. And they also say it has a stellar reputation. And right there, I thought, But they talk about specific instances that happened recently that are more aligned with interest on the left, like human rights. And I thought, okay, well, people can still learn from this article that there are paid players at work manipulating Wikipedia. And they said, and the other reason this is important is that if you put in a search term, like I put in force majeure. Force majeure is a French term meaning greater force. Trump ensured the traffic in the Strait of Hormuz against greater harm, force majeure. And that's why a lot of the people that have contracts, ships to send oil, ship oil, they can stop in place because they're like, oh, greater things, force majeure. So when I type that in, you get an AI thing at the top. And AI fills that in. And where's the AI getting that information? Often from Wikipedia. But kids, people, average people think, oh, this has to be accurate because it's AI popping up with this, right? So, and they said, for this reason, AI tools have begun to carry the site's content far and wide. Chatbots and AI generated search summaries. They use Wikipedia as a key source. But now they said we can reveal Wikipedia has been subject to shady paid for edits ordered by partners at an elite London PR firm with links to, of all places, Downing Street, the Prime Minister. And these are clients who benefited what is called wiki laundering by some of the world's richest and most powerful people. So the firm in question is called Portland Communications, and the founder, Tim Allen, is now the director for communications for Keir Starmer, who's the Prime Minister of the UK. Okay, so it had already been busted for this practice, but I just wanted to share some of the methods because they're very sneaky. You can't say, why should you believe in conspiracies when you have evidence of so much sneaky behavior? So former employers shared with them that it started with hiring middlemen. The question is, once they got caught doing this, getting paid to alter Wikipedia pages, the question wasn't, how do we need to stop? We need to stop doing it. Was, how can we keep going without getting caught? So what they did was they hired subcontractors. Now our government does this too. They'll hire subcontractors to do the dirty work, right? So subcontractors were hired to polish the public image of Qatar by bearing references to critical reporting ahead of the 2022 World Cup. And they also obscured mentions of a major terrorist financing case involving Qatari businessmen, billionaires. They also scrubbed evidence that a $1 billion Gates-funded project failed in its mission, and then they promoted one side of Libya's post-Gaddafi government over the other. So the PR firm goes to town, and just like the media, they slant and bury and all sorts of things. But they said their changes were more subtle, bearing bad press under descriptions of a client's philanthropic work or swapping out critical news references with something more positive. So people don't know that anyone can edit Wikipedia, but you're supposed to you follow certain rules. And then there's volunteers who do this. There's also there's volunteer editors who do that, and contributors who create the articles. And Wikipedia is supposed to catch this. And they say, we're trying to be neutral. We're trying to show sourcing conflicts of interest. I don't know if you've ever gone into a Wikipedia page and you can see which changes have been made. They're supposed to keep a list of changes. And they said it's supposed to be hard to publish misinformation. So this is what they learned. A senior researcher at the University of Toronto Citizens Lab said professionals who tried to manipulate Wikipedia know that small incremental changes are likely to stick for longer.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
So that the editors don't come back in and switch it back. These kinds of edits make narratives seem credible precisely because they're hardly noticed. But once that information edits the information stream, especially through AI, becomes very hard to claw back. And it says, this surprised me because I don't use Wikipedia. It says demand for Wikipedia editing has never been higher. And that demand, now there's a thriving cottage industry of black hats, the black hat editors who go in. So they hired somebody as a subcontractor who lives on the Welsh coast, and his thing is SEO, search engine optimization. This is how we get manipulated. His name was Radek, Web3 Consulting, and he was forced to dissolve it last year. But he said he was a key figure in Portland's secret wiki laundering business. And this is his specialty. So we've heard of black hat hacking. Black hat hacking is you're illegally hacking. White hat hacking is you're doing it for businesses so they can see where their vulnerabilities are. But he's a black hat. He was a black hat. And it's very interesting because they had 14 industry insiders come and speak to this investigation anonymously because they're under, I don't understand how a non-disclosure agreement and how you have to adhere to that, even if you're disclosing something that your employer did that was illegal. I'm not sure. That's a side thing. But they found out that there's a network of sock puppets. This is so fun. 26 sock puppets, multiple accounts orchestrated by a single person. And that was eventually banned under Wikipedia's suspicious paid editing. It said up until 2010, they did their own wiki laundering. And the firm's partner, somebody would come to them and they'd say, oh, my Wikipedia page, I keep getting hit on this. And we have people who can handle that. And so what their junior staff did, this is prior to 2010, they would do an edit, then they'd go to a different cafe and upload using a different internet. And they'd make a small edit. Then they'd go to a different cafe. They kept rotating through London and all these different cafes and New York to edit clients' pages from different computers using different IP addresses. So this is how serious this stuff is. But in 2011, the firm was caught trying to remove a reference to domestic violence on the page of Stella Artois. And so then they got in trouble about doing this. And it was determined this was considered digital dark arts. This is what we're susceptible to and what people, kids, most people don't know that this is happening, right?
Right.
I mean, when's the last time you trusted Wikipedia?
I don't because I know the government has a lot to do with that, and I mean, the manipulation on the internet is so far-reaching and so far entrenched that I mean, I hope we all realize that. Same with AI. You know, it's written to bend toward narrative, and it has to. It doesn't know how to answer anything without narrative. So, yeah. And
It says, and
Mhm.
these influence operators are
Mhm.
attracted to Wikipedia because it's a means of shaping perceptions in large
Right.
populations. Like it's a
Mhm.
small amount of
Mhm.
money for a big effect. And that's
Yeah.
according to one of the researchers. And they
Mhm.
said, while people are increasingly skeptical of what they see on social media, Wikipedia remains a point of reference. And
Mhm.
that's why the bad actors are really going for it.
Mhm.
So what happened in Qatar became a surprising, um, a surprise that they would get to, it's that a shock host for the 2022 World Cup. This was in 2010.
Mhm.
But right away, the country's human rights records began to draw intense scrutiny.
Mhm.
And then they had these big construction projects in anticipation of the 2022 World Cup.
Mhm.
And the human rights abuses really started to multiply, including deaths of migrant workers.
Mhm.
And so that all got crushed on
Yeah.
Wikipedia, that got
Mhm.
buried. And
Right.
so they said this is, and the invoice had its title, quote, Government Affairs Through Nation Rebranding. So in other words, they had these terrible human rights, they had to rebrand.
Mhm.
And so they said Wikipedia edits were very common request from the Qataris.
Mhm.
And they ran into all these problems, hedging negative press, burying it under favorable material. And the Wikipedia editors started to flag this as suspicious.
Mhm.
But then it just became a tug of war. And so this is what's been happening behind the scenes. They've now been sued, the Qatari government. Oh no, Portland's Qatar contract,
Mhm.
Portland was sued by more than 100 victims of the World Cup construction projects who alleged the PR firm helps Qatar hide its human rights records such
Mhm.
that they aided human trafficking.
Mhm.
So you can see how if the human rights on Wikipedia is buried, that more of these migrant workers would then be willing to be trafficked
Mhm.
to go there and do these projects. But if there was more available online about the human rights abuses, so
Mhm.
more people got sucked into those human
Right.
trafficking networks because of Wikipedia, and they weren't on top of the fake information.
Mhm.
So it's really a big thing.
Mhm.
This is not a small thing. They
Yeah.
did report on the Gates Foundation had planned to help double the revenue of 30 million farmers. But a study showed that that did not happen at all. So
Mhm.
the evaluation section of that study was buried on Wikipedia
Mm.
because the project failed. So if a
Mhm.
project fails, what do? You bury the result on Wikipedia.
Mhm.
And I thought, okay, wow, this is, we may be more sophisticated about this, but a lot of people searching for information, trying to make economic decisions about their lives
Mhm.
are not as sophisticated. And that's where all this Wikipedia stuff is just really coming to the attention of more people who would normally be more liberal.
Mhm.
They're like, wait a minute, this is actually facilitating trafficking because
Interesting.
this information is buried.
All right.
So
Well,
that I thought that was very interesting
yeah.
how the very elite PR firms
Mhm.
so successful that the founder of the company is now the communication director for the Prime Minister of England. So these governments
Mhm.
also
Right.
very positive
Mhm.
to keep their billionaire friends and
Mhm.
heads of government
Yeah.
happy.
Speaking of heads of government, so Caroline Levitt came out and said today, killing these brutal terrorists is good for America and makes the world safer. I just want to say, as a conservative, where have we heard that before?
Simplistic.
Yeah.
It's
Mhm.
very simplistic.
We've heard that so many times in the script that I mean, let's take some time to count, how many times we've heard this. It just floors me that they stay on the same script over and over and over again, thinking no one's going to notice. But as a conservative, knowing that we've said that many times and that it's been the justification for a lot of things that have nothing to do with making us safer, but it just makes us less free. And that's the only outcome that I can see. So
it sounds exactly like a
Mhm.
justification.
Well,
doesn't
yeah, I
it?
mean,
Like,
the
we
world's
need-
safer. It's like I feel less safe today than people did, I'm sure, in 1950, with very, very much so. So we're not actually going in the right direction here. And yeah, when we carry out these actions based on deals or based on the trajectories of plans and agendas, and then we call it good and safe for America, the world safer. I'm just like, I just don't buy that, because it's never happened. So it only makes it worse. Remember how the UN was supposed to make the world safer?
Right. Right. Well, I thought there's
The
all
invention of that.
these hidden networks here in the United States that are supposed to spring to life in retaliation, that are making us less safe. Activating these secret Iranian networks here.
Yeah.
So I also saw a justification, that Iran planned to assassinate the president, and therefore this is another justification. And sometimes the more times people come up with justifications for something, that's a red flag.
Yeah.
Because like, why isn't it just obvious that it's one thing? And it's right now destabilizing. I was laughing because one of the other articles I was going to bring up was from The Atlantic, who had to inform us that MAGA's immigration and pro-natalist goals are at odds. It says when deportations increase, the child care workforce tends to decrease. And I thought, are you guys saying you have illegals watching your kids? And that's exactly what they're saying, is that you have to be able to justify keeping them here, because
whatever the Atlantic spits out is like liberal garbage. So who knows if it's
a
even
justification.
True. Yeah.
They're trying to sell a justification. And I thought, okay, they're really stretching to say you have pro-natalist goals. They don't want us having 10 kids each. They don't want us having 5 kids each. But what they do say is women, once the ICE raids started deporting more people, that more women, 77,000 US born mothers of kids under 5 dropped out of the workforce. So they don't care about the child care. They care about the child care of working mothers. And so immigrants make up at least 21% of the child care workforce, and this may be an undercount. So I don't mind an immigrant watching, children, but if they're illegal, is that what they're saying? And that's essentially what they're saying.
So filled with hypocrisy that I don't even know where to start. How they deal with immigration here, but how they deal with the bombings over there. I don't know. I'm just the whole thing. I'm a conservative after the truth, and I love our Constitution, and I just want truth. And I just feel like we're getting lied to at every turn right now, and especially about what's going on in the Middle East and immigration, because like I said last week, all we have to do is go back to voluntary, you can either be criminally prosecuted or leave the country, and 97% of them left that came in when they were caught. So, but we won't go back to that. It's never even introduced as an option. So,
right.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
well,
we just,
I usually peruse The Atlantic because I want to understand their justifications. I want to see how hard they're trying to manipulate an argument to try and claw in. Like they're saying we're hypocrites. We're saying, so one of the paragraph says, well, maybe this is what MAGA wants. literally, perhaps this is what the MAGA movement wants, for American women to quit their jobs to stay home with their kids. And then they go into JD Vance has suggested parents do that. I'm like, well, what do you mean what we want? We would like them to be able to if they want, but taxes, costs are so high, a lot of them can't. But the answer is not what they're proposing. They're saying there's one answer, and this is it, which is illegal immigration. And they're saying, you know, if Trump gets his way in deporting 4 million people, unemployment in the childcare sector would shrink by 15%. And that would make continuing to work more difficult. He wants to deport illegals. Are they?
But we're not really deporting. We're pretty much building places for them to be here while they go through said process of.
That's exactly right. You're right. You're absolutely
ridiculousness.
Right.
But
they're saying Trump voters pronatalism is much less popular as an issue because there's other things now that have come to the forefront. So.
They're trying to prop it up again by using.
They are, yes,
by using the right to.
I just can't, and they have. I have to laugh at some of the titles. It's like the loneliness of the conservative pronatalist. Like
pronatalist,
lonely.
Can you
it's like, you guys try so hard. It's just so.
I know. It's amazing.
Very entertaining. I have to say, there's just a lot that's.
Thanks, Susan. I appreciate you coming
You're so
on.
welcome.
Thank you.
My pleasure,
And
Kate.
all right, so I just appreciate that. That's Susan Reeve. And a couple of things. Number one, tomorrow, Peter Schweitzer, his new book, that should be interesting. Number two, formulaiq.com, formulaiq.com. That's where I get my supplements. I really love their supplements. The way they do them, the ingredients, they actually go into the body and you can feel the difference. So don't buy crap supplements like Walmart, please. Please make sure you're getting some really good supplements because you can order them online and they actually have great prices and great deals, and you can actually get a discount by using the code Kate. So I encourage you to do so. Their vitamin C, their beef liver one. I mean, I have them all. They're awesome. They're incredible. Make sure and go and do that. And it supports the show. And especially Cardio Miracle. I'm actually drinking it right now. I love Cardio Miracle. I'm serious. The level of vitamin C that you're getting from this, my gosh, amazing. And it tastes good. So I sip on it all day. I have it in the morning, then I sip on it all day. But I just wanted you to know that you can go try it too. Cardiomiracle.com /Kate. Many people on the show, many of the listeners take it, and I'm so glad because I get to hear all the feedback of how much you love it, and I love it too. And so I do 2 doses a day. That was a game changer because 1 dose didn't really do much. 2 doses was amazing. So you can really feel the difference, and you don't get winded. You know, as far as that goes, you can exercise longer and better, and it's amazing. Also, cardiomiracle.com /Kate. Go there and try it out. Okay. And also, back to formulaiq.com, try copper. Okay. If your iron's low, do copper because copper raises the iron level, not artificially. And I love it because it's actually getting your body to produce that iron. That's so important. So Formula IQ, code word is Kate. Also the remineralization of your teeth. The toothpaste, the child's toothpaste, the mouthwash, the remineralization deodorant, amazing products. I use the whitener on my teeth. I love it. And plus you're feeding those teeth with minerals. So go to my website, katedalleyradio.com, and you'll see all of that there, katedalleyradio.com, and order there. Always the code Kate. So it's easy to do, and really appreciate you tuning in, of course. And go check out the Maha episodes that are coming out. There are some things that are actually going on that are good, and I really want you to see that. And so I think it's on Netflix, if I'm right, and Prime. But the Maha episodes that started getting released the end of February. So check it out. It's very, very cool what's going on. And there are some good things. And we have so far to go, right? This show has always talked about health, has always kind of unveiled the bad history of health advice coming from the government. And so I know that it's a challenge, and it's something that we have to learn. And we've been so brainwashed, food pyramid to vaccine programs, to you name it. We've been completely brainwashed. So I encourage you to get healthy. Just get healthy right now. That's all we just need, all hands on deck. What can I say? Be faithful, be fearless. And of course, I'll see you here tomorrow. The show is now Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I'll be back tomorrow with that guest. And of course, I'll take callers so you can call in, and can't wait to hear from you. And of course, thanks for tuning in. Appreciate it. And like and subscribe the show on YouTube and Rumble and X. Appreciate you guys, and Facebook. Thanks, you guys.